What's up, YouTube? It's the one and only Legend of Winning, aka Low, and I'm back with another episode of the NBA preview. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Phoenix Suns. If you missed my last video, make sure you go check it out. I'm going to have a playlist and also have some annotations popping up as well. And always hit the subscribe button and notification bell to keep in contact with the channel and always stay updated. But in today's video, we're going to break down the Phoenix Suns and what exactly to expect in this next upcoming season. Now, when it comes to the Phoenix Suns, unfortunately, they probably have been one of the more unluckiest teams in the NBA over the past 2 to 3 years. It's extremely obvious that the Phoenix Suns are in a rebuilding mode. However, their draft picks that they've selected within their top 5 picks really have never really panned out. Players such as Alex Len and maybe even Dragonbender have potential bust status labeled to their careers, while other players such as Tyler Ulis and obviously Devin Booker have bigger statuses on this roster and have much more potential than some of the top 5 selections. The problem with this is that even though, yes, they do have some very quality players on this team that they selected outside the top 5, you definitely want your top 5 picks to turn out to be productive players. And when this doesn't happen, it becomes extremely frustrating and it becomes much more difficult to actually build a quality roster. But speaking of draft picks, that's actually leading us into the summer of social media.
Please not the 4th week to the Suns. Please not the 4th week to the Suns. Please God, no. Please God, no. Please no, Phoenix, no. No! No!
Now, like I said earlier, the Phoenix Suns, their top 4 or 5 draft picks really haven't panned out, but a part of that is also due to the fact that they more than likely should have had a higher draft pick, or at least had some odds of getting a higher draft pick, but it never really panned out for them. 2 years ago, the draft order stayed exactly the same, which is something that just doesn't happen. And then in this last draft lottery, it didn't pan out for them either, as the Phoenix Suns had the top 3 pick and they got bumped out of the top 3 and got the 4th selection. Now don't get me wrong, I think players such as De'Aaron Fox and Josh Jackson will go on to have very quality careers, and I think they could have potential to be an all-star, even superstars on any roster because of their raw and sheer talent. However, when it comes to players such as Lonzo Ball, Jason Tatum, and obviously Markelle Fultz, those players definitely seem like they have the abilities or some skill set that definitely separates themselves from everyone else that was selected in the top 10. Again, don't get me wrong, this last draft class was extremely deep, extremely talented, so I definitely feel as if the Phoenix Suns got them someone special. But the Suns had an opportunity to draft Lonzo Ball, and quite honestly, I thought that a backcourt with Lonzo Ball and Devin Booker definitely would have been much more exciting to watch, and I think a lot of people were anticipating. So unfortunately, that is the situation that the Phoenix Suns are in right now. They're still solid, they're still straight, but moving forward, it is something they have to deal with. And speaking of moving forward, let's go ahead and look at their depth chart, and let's look at some of the contracts that they have on the books. So as we clearly can see, this is an organization that is obviously rebuilding because they really didn't do much of anything. Now, even though, yes, Allen Williams is technically the only player who's signed a contract, that's the reason why he's the only player on this list. Alex Len is still out there, and there's multiple reports claiming that he's going to sign a qualifying offer before training camp. So keep that in mind as well. And then when it comes to expiring contracts, we have TJ Warren. And oh yeah, before I continue to go, because I actually restarted this entire recording just because of this breaking news, the Phoenix Suns actually signed Anthony Bennett. Let's get it, yo. They got the god Anthony Bennett on the roster now. And let's be clear, if you're ever at a point where your general manager or your head coaches or the decision makers of your organization, they're sitting down and on the whiteboard as free agents, they have Anthony Bennett written down, that's when you know you're rebuilding. That's when you know you're rebuilding, because at that point, yeah, it's over at that point. So shout out to Anthony Bennett for finding himself a contract on the Phoenix Suns, and I really don't know what type of minutes he's supposed to be expected to get, but it is what it is. Let's go ahead and look at this depth chart. So the starting five looks fine in certain aspects. Devin Booker and Eric Bledsoe in the backcourt with one another, TJ Warren at the 3, and then Marquise Chris and Tyson Chandler rounding up the 4 and the 5 position. But then we get to the bench, and that's where things get really shaky, and the depth really starts to shrink up. And maybe that's the reason why they signed Anthony Bennett, mainly because both Brandon Knight and Jared Dudley are suffering from injuries that will keep them sidelined for either multiple months or possibly even the entire season. Brandon Knight suffered from an ACL tear that a lot of people are expecting to keep him out for the entire season. Then when it comes to Jared Dudley, If I'm not mistaken, he's going to undergo surgery, so that's going to keep him out for the next 2 to 4 months, so keep that in mind as well. But then for the rest of the bench, we have Tyler Ulis, Millsap, Josh Jackson, Dragonbender, and then Alex Len if he does indeed sign that qualifying offer. And I'm pretty sure, as you clearly can see, this roster really isn't that good whatsoever. Now, when it comes to this roster, there's about 2 or 3 players that I have to point out when it comes to the potential that they could possibly have. Obviously, you have Josh Jackson. This next upcoming season, they're desperately going to need him. 6'8", already over 200 pounds. He has the athleticism. He just has to add that jump shot to his game. And then when it comes to Tyler Ulis and Marquise Chris, these are the 2 players that I definitely want to point out, because last year, towards the end of the season, they got better. Some of their numbers went up, especially when they received more minutes, especially Tyler Ulis. The last 15 games of the season, he became a starter as Eric Bledsoe sat out for the remainder of the season. He nearly averaged 9 assists a game towards the end of the season, and his field goal percentage didn't dip too much. It was roughly around 41 to 42%, which is fine for a rookie. But with that being said, a lot of people will just point out the fact that he received a lot more minutes. He was playing nearly 40 minutes per game, which definitely would inflate your numbers. And the same thing can be said about Marquise Chris. He became a much more consistent 3-point shooter, so I definitely have to give him those credits. But outside of that, his numbers did go up as well, but we really don't necessarily know how consistent of a player he's going to be. But when it comes to young players establishing themselves and becoming better as the years progress in their career, we obviously have to put spotlight on my man Devin Booker, which is why he is the spotlight player of the day. Now, when it comes to Devin Booker, I'm kind of split on him. The reason why is because there's so many people over the past couple of months who've been jumping to the conclusion claiming that Devin Booker is going to be the next Kobe Bryant. And to me, that's crazy. Like, I don't like labeling young guys, comparing them to all-time great players. To me, that's ridiculous. Devin Booker's Devin Booker. He is who he is, but he definitely shows some progress offensively. He's definitely become a much more consistent mid-range shooter. He already has his spots on the floor, especially around the elbow. His three-point shooting is becoming significantly better, especially at the top of the key, and you can clearly tell that he can create his own shot at the top of the key and consistently knock it down from behind the arc. And he already has a corner shot as well, so I definitely like that. And the finishing around the rim is something that he's perfected pretty early on in his career. And so being a 6'6" guard in today's NBA, being able to handle the ball and create your own shot behind the arc, at the elbow, and finishing around the lane. However, that's really all he does. Again, he's not a defender, he's not a facilitator, he doesn't really grab that many rebounds. And obviously these are things that are going to come into his game as he continues to progress. And he's so young that he's just really trying to add whatever he possibly can to help the team win. And if that means just going out there giving the team 20 to 22 points on a night-to-night basis, then that's what he's going to do. However, as time continues to progress, he has to keep adding things to his game. He has to become more prolific as a scorer, because defenses will continue to adjust. It will become much more harder for him to score. And that's something that I do want to see out of him, because if we're going to jump out the window and say that he's the next Kobe Bryant, that's definitely something that I would love to see out of Devin Booker within the next 2 to 3 years. But with that being said, I'm not going to put everything on Devin Booker, because at the end of the day, he needs help. Like, he has to get some help from some of his younger players. So if you have a player such as Marquise Chris, Tyler Ulis, hopefully Dragonbender, because I don't know what Dragonbender is doing, but hopefully he gets some from Dragonbender as well. If he can get some productivities from some of his other players, and then Josh Jackson can just slowly but surely kind of creep into the offense, but more so being a defensive presence, I honestly believe that this is going to be a really, really solid team, which is something I feel like a lot of people are overlooking. Shout out to Salvation Sal Tweets. I don't understand where y'all come up with these names, but shout out to you, man. He asks, can the Suns make any good trades out of Eric Bledsoe, or should they just keep him around? Let's get something clear. Keeping Eric Bledsoe is a massive mistake. In my opinion, they've kept Eric Bledsoe way too long anyway, but I understand he's been suffering from injuries over the last 2 years, so that definitely lowered his trade value. But Eric Bledsoe is a player, 7-year vet. He's going to be 28 by the end of the season, and he's a 6'1" guard who can give you around 20 points on a night-to-night basis. He's definitely become a much better 3-point shooter, more consistent, and he's still going to give you around 5 rebounds and 5 or 6 assists and around a steal and a half to 2. So I actually like Eric Bledsoe, especially with the amount of money that he's making, $14 to $15 million a year. That's a steal in today's market, especially if you're just looking for a quality starting point guard that's going to be the third option on your team. And I feel like Eric Bledsoe can definitely step into a lot of other teams' offenses and really take over, or at least be the ball handler and distribute out the offense and still be a floor spacer. The problem with Eric Bledsoe though is that he again suffers from injuries, so that's definitely a problem with his game. So if I were the Phoenix Suns, I would be looking for as many draft assets or young players as possible to move Eric Bledsoe. I stated this in my Atlanta Hawks video as well, where you have certain teams like the San Antonio Spurs or even the Denver Nuggets, and I actually think the Denver Nuggets is a really good team that you could trade Eric Bledsoe to. They got some young players that are kind of questionable, or even if the Denver Nuggets are willing to move up on a draft pick, I don't mind taking a mid-first round draft pick for Eric Bledsoe if I am the Phoenix Suns, especially if it's from a team that we don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs or not. So if I was the Phoenix Suns, trade them to the Denver Nuggets, get some young players that the Denver Nuggets are not utilizing anymore, especially some of those guards over there, and also get some draft picks as well. Make sure they're unprotected, because I do believe Eric Bledsoe is worth giving up some unprotected mid-first round picks for. And again, he's making $14 to $15 million, and he can be a 20-point scorer. And also, he's really good on the defensive end. That's something that I definitely overlooked. So when it comes to the Phoenix Suns, I think that is something that a lot of people are just casually overlooking, and it's the fact that this team has the potential to have a really quality roster, which I know is a big if though, but if done correctly, the Phoenix Suns can definitely turn this around in the next 2 to 3 years. But with that being said, people, let me know what you feel about this video. Let me know what you think about the Phoenix Suns in the comment section below. And with that being said, I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.